In this video, we're going to talk about ioe463 exercise 4.1, which is an use of AutoCAD to construct a 2D side and top view of a worker standing at a workbench. And we'll be adding some dimensions to that as well. And our goal here is to use this to create or describe the spatial relationship between the worker and the work. So let's go to the assignments. Let's click on assignments here. I'm on the 463 Canvas site if you're following along. And if we go to assignments, we can go to the resources at the top and we can click on AutoCAD, section 4. Several useful references here. There's a series of video recordings that I've made that walk you through the basic steps for completing essentially all 4 of these exercises. But we'll go through them here together again, so it's got an up-to-date reference. In case you weren't in class today, you can see what you missed. We've talked before about a web app that shows the spatial relationship between the worker and the work, and we can specify workers of different statures, and this app will calculate average proportions for us. We can specify a workbench. The dimensions here are expressed in millimeters, so we don't have to worry about decimal places. The height here we're going to use is 900 millimeters, which corresponds to 36 inches, or 90 centimeters, which is what's specified in the assignment. We're going to make the depth here 1,000 millimeters, which will be 1 meter and correspond to our assignment. We're going to make the width 2,000 millimeters, corresponds to our assignment, and then we're going to calculate the reach limits for touch as opposed to closing the fist around something. And basically here you can see we get the side view, stick figure representing the torso and the outstretched arm, a semicircle representing how far this worker could reach out in front of them without bending or twisting. And you can see the line going out horizontally here, and another one coming down to the bench, and you can see how when you reach down to the bench, that effectively reduces how far you can reach along the horizontal plane. And the top view shows then these reach limits for on the surface of the bench from a top view. And of course, this is very useful for comparing the location of the work with the worker's ability to reach that object. Okay, so we're going to do this using AutoCAD. So I'm just going to close this. Oh, and one other thing I'll call your attention to, there is a Google Sheet here with the same link data on it. I'd encourage you to print this out. It's really kind of handy to have it when you're constructing these link figures in AutoCAD. But for now, I'm going to close that. And we're going to come back to assignments, and we'll go down to the actual assignment itself. And this will be AutoCAD exercise 4.1 2D workstation. And the assignment is up here. And that'll open a Google Sheet. It has the assignment in it, and basically it says worker standing at a workbench, 5 percentile female height, average proportions, 95 percentile male, average proportions. The workbench is 90 centimeters deep, or 100 centimeters deep, 90 centimeters high, and 200 centimeters wide. The top's 5 centimeters thick, and the legs are 5 by 5 centimeters. So that's pretty straightforward. And we'll use these same dimensions in the next, well, actually all 4 of these exercises, so you probably want to hang on to these. And then we're going to put different parts of this in different layers, and then we're going to add some dimensions to it as well. And finally, we'll export some of these things to blocks, and also make a layout view for printing and sharing our model. Okay, so now I'm going to go to AutoCAD. Let's go over here and click on AutoCAD, and actually I've already got it open, and it wants to create a new drawing. So to create a new drawing, I have to specify a drawing template, and I'm going to use acad.dwt. It's a very simple template, and will suffice for our purposes, has suitable default settings. And basically it pops up here with all my tool palettes on the left. And by the way, this is a Mac version, which some of you will recognize right away, as opposed to a Windows version that has these ribbons, that will have ribbons across the top of the tool menus in it. But if we come down here and type our commands into the command line, it's just not really going to know whether we're using a Windows machine or a Mac version. Okay, now first thing we're going to do is we're going to set our drawing units. In the Mac, you can come up here and select the format and come down to to units. Or in either case, either machine, you can come down here in the window and you can just type units. And you'll get the drawing units window popping up here. And we'll be working in decimals, which is the default. We're going to work in centimeters, so I'm going to make my precision here. I'll tell you what, just to make this easy, I'm going to make my drawing to the nearest centimeter, but we can change that if we need to on the fly. And then I'll come down here, and the default is inches, so I'm going to change that to centimeters right here. Okay, and that should work for us. Now, another thing that'll make life a little easier for us is if we turn on a dynamic menu. And right now you can see I can type my commands in here, and I can, if I want to make a line, I can come up here to the get a line tool, and I can click in one place and I can click the next one. Or I can type in the coordinates of where I want to put it down here in the command line. Let me hit escape to get out of that command. And let me show you what the dynamic menu will do for us. If you come down here at the lower right, we've got all these settings for our drawing tools. And you'll see the one's got a little plus sign in the upper left corner and then a little box to the lower right. I'm going to left click on that and go to settings, and it will pop right up here with a drafting settings window, and it goes right to the dynamic input, and I'm going to select basically everything on the screen, and including the tips. Always use some advice even when it's from the computer. Okay, so that's helpful. The next thing so let me actually just show you what that looks like. So if I grab my line tool and come up here and make a line, so for example, make a vertical line to start drawing my bench, you can see now right by the cursor, there's a little note that says specify next point. And I can just basically move this in the direction that I want, and literally just type in that distance. So I'm going to move it here to approximately, 90 degrees, because I want it to be straight up. Okay, so I can move it to 90. And then I can just type in 90 centimeters for the height of my bench and type return. And I basically made the first line for my workbench. Now, let me hit escape and get out of that line for a second. And you notice this line goes off off my drawing. So now I can use the center mouse wheel and zoom out to bring that back down. And then I can kind of use my center wheel to pan. I'll press down the center wheel of the mouse and I can kind of pan, bring this over the corner. So now I've kind of set the drawing extent so I can actually create my full workbench. All right, now that line is still selected, so I'll just type E for erase, and it goes away, and we'll do this again. Okay, but this time I'm going to use the polyline tool. I'll come over here and get polyline, or I can type P-line. You can see it pops up in the window down there. And again, I get a note by the cursor that says specify first point. So I'm going to come out here and give yourself a little bit of room with respect to this X and Y symbol in the lower right, so you don't hide some of your drawing behind the X and Y. And we'll just come up here. And well, actually, before I do that, notice it's a little bit tedious to specify this to the nearest degree. So one other thing I can do, I'll hit escape to get out of this command. And see down here, I'll come back to my drawing settings, and there's another one that shows two perpendicular lines, and I put my cursor that says ortho mode. So I'm going to click on that. Now I'm going to start this again. I'll get my drawing tool, and I'll give it my first point. And now you'll notice that it constrains the movements of my cursor to right angles or parallel to the major axis of the drawing reference system. So I can go horizontally here to the right, I can go vertically up, I can go horizontally to the left, or I can go horizontally down. So to make my 90 centimeter line for the first line of my drawing, it's pretty easy. I can just kind of pop up here, and I'll type 90. Okay, and then I want to make my bench 100 centimeters deep, so I'll come across this way, type 100. And now I'll come back down, and I'm going to type 90. Okay, now I'm going to come in. I want to make my legs 5 centimeters wide, so I'll type 5. Now I'm going to come back up, and I want to leave some thickness for the top, so I'll come up 85. And now I'll come across, and I want to leave some thickness for this next leg, so I'll come across here to 90. Remember, my top bench is 90, or it's 100 centimeters deep, but I got to take off 5 centimeters for each leg, so I'll just type 90. And I'll come down, and I'll type 85. And now I can come back to the starting point just by typing 5, or more simply, I can just type C for closed, and it will basically now give me a closed polygon and end my use of the polygon tool. So now I got a workbench, and I can, let me zoom out just a little bit so you can see it a little better. Looks something like this. I'll kind of move down here at the corner. So that's basically all there is to drawing that. You'll see in a second, there's a couple other things I can do to make this a little easier. But before I do that, one of the things I want to call to your attention is that the assignment said to put this bench in a separate layer called bench. Now, I just started drawing, and when you just start drawing in a like this, it actually puts things in the 0 or base layer. Okay, so I've got to create a separate layer for this and move it to that layer. Now, if you're in the Mac version, if you come down here, the layer window should open by default. And if you come down here, below that, at the bottom of it, you'll see, it kind of looks like parallel sheets of paper. And when you put your cursor over it, it'll say new layer. So I'll click on that, and you'll see now another layer has popped up here, and the default name is layer 1. But we're going to change that to bench. I'll just put BNCH for bench. Okay. And let's give that bench a lovely color so it kind of distinguishes from the other layer. And let's find something, magenta I guess is okay. Okay, now I've got to move my bench to that layer. Right now the bench is in the 0 layer, and I can tell that by, if I select the bench, you'll see below the windows, or the layers window, is something called the properties window. And if you look at the properties window, you'll see it says layer 0, but there's a little drop down there, and I can just come over and select bench, and it'll move it to the bench. Okay. And now I'll come back and just click my drawing area so I can kind of deselect or hit escape to deselect the bench. And you can see the bench is now turned blue or magenta because it's in the bench layer. If I click on that again, you'll see, come over here and you can see it in the properties when it says bench. Now, the neat thing about that is that if I want to hide my bench, since it's still the 0 layer is active, if I come down here and click this option button right beside it, it hides it. So this makes it easy for me to selectively show different parts of my drawing and to declutter them. And you'll see how that's useful in just a minute. Okay, so the next thing, let's finish constructing our bench. And this time to construct the top view, I'm just going to switch my active layer to the bench. So I can, if I come up here and click on where it says 0, you'll see there's a little triangle. If I click on that, I get a drop-down menu. It enables me to select the bench. Now the bench is active layer, and anything I draw will be in that bench layer. Okay, so the top of the bench is going to be 100 by 200. Okay, so 100 centimeters by 200 centimeters, or 1 meter by 1 meter. So let me move this down a little bit so I got room to construct that. And it'll be easiest if I make this kind of start right here and line it up with my drawing. It's very important when you make a side view and a top view that the top view is aligned perfectly with the side view. Or if I were to construct a front view, it would be important that it be aligned here off to the side. One other thing that's going to help me do that, there's another tool, and I'm going to come down here where it has these little dots, and you see when I put my cursor over that, it says snap mode. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go to settings, and there's lots of snap things. Hopefully you've had a chance to play with some of these by now, but I'm going to select the object snap, and I'm going to tell it I want to make the endpoint snaps active, and I want to make the midpoints active, and I'm going to turn on object snap. Okay, and there may be some others. I can come back and turn them on as I need to, and I'll type OK. Okay, now look at what happens. Now I want to make my top bench. I'll get the this time I'm going to use the rectangle tool because the top of the bench from the top looks like a triangle, a rectangle. And you notice when I position my cursor here that it kind of draws a box around that corner, and what it's doing is it tells me that it's going to start my the first point for my box right on top of that corner of the bench. So I'll just click that and I'll come up, and I can just come up here and I can type the depth and the top. So the width of the bench is going to be 100, and I'll put comma, and the top of it is going to, or the height of it's going to be 200. And there you can see I've got the top, but it's right next to this. I probably want to spread them apart a little bit, but I can use a move command to move those apart. In fact, let's go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to type move, M-O-V. I'm going to select the piece on top, or the top bench. I'll hit return until I'm done selecting. I'm going to again come down here and use my snap command to click on the lower left corner. And I've got the ortho mode already turned on, so I can either only move this vertically or horizontally. I'm going to move it vertically, and let's move it up here. Let's go 160 centimeters. Give ourselves a little bit of space. So now, if I zoom out, you see there's the top and the side view of my bench. So that's the first part of the exercise. All right, next thing. Let's go ahead and construct our worker. Now again, I could construct the worker in any layer and move it to the layer, but since we know we want to put it in its own layer, let's come down here and create a new layer. And I'm going to call this F5 for my female based on 5 percentile stature and average proportions. And let's give it a distinctive color. So let's see, something's going to show up on both a white or black background. So let's make it orange. Okay. Okay, so now if you look at that sheet that I gave you with all the dimensions on it, we're going to use a 10 centimeter offset. So basically we're going to put a 10 centimeter long foot on this person, which is probably a little short for most people, but it'll serve us well as a good reference point. And there may be places where you actually want to look at your link lengths and see what is a reasonable foot length, because you need to provide clearance for the foot, but that's not what we're going to focus on right here. Okay, so let me come up and get the polyline tool, and I'm going to zoom in on the bottom view here a little bit more so I can see what I'm doing. And I'll come down here to the lower left corner, and you can see again the snap function serving me very well, because I'll just come over here and I'll kind of come over 10. Okay, and I'm going to come up this direction. Now I'm going to come up in the vertical direction, and it tells me from my sheet that the distance from the floor to the shoulder here is going to be 123 centimeters. So go 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I'm a little bit off the top of the screen, so I'll use my mouse wheel and zoom out a little bit. Now I want to put a horizontal line here that corresponds to the distance from the shoulder to touch. And according to the dimensions here, that's 66.2 centimeters. So I'm going to type 66.2. And that gave me that line representing this. I'll type just return to tell it I'm done. So now I've got my line representing the worker. But you notice it's the same color as my workbench. That means that's because I forgot to move my make my F5 layer active. But no worries, I can fix it. So in fact, let's do that right now. First thing I want to do is come here where it says bench and bring that down to F5. I tried to make this orange, but apparently I forgot to hit return or something. So let's do this again. I'll come back here and select the color orange. Okay, this time it's stuck. Now I'll come back here. I'm going to select this link representing the worker. I'll come down to my properties menu, and I will just come down to where it says layer. You can see right here it says it's in the bench layer. So move it to the F5 layer. There we go. That should do it. Let's hit escape and see if it worked. Okay, now I got a yellow line there. Okay, so now I got kind of a side view of the stick figure. The next thing I want to do is to create this semicircle around here to represent how far the worker can reach in front of him. Now I could do that using an arc tool, But it's actually easiest if I do this using the circle tool. And all I gotta do is click on circle, or again, if depending on which machine you do, if you just type C, actually all you gotta do is type C for circle, I guess. Okay, just type C. And then I can just move it over the intersection here of the shoulder, and it wants to snap to that, and you'll see it also then wants to snap to the end of the arm, and that gives me a circle. And it shows me how far somebody can reach in front of them, and it also shows where they can't reach behind them, so I gotta trim that circle down. And there's a tool for this called trim, and if I type TR, it'll give me trim. And if I come back and click on the part I want to trim and type return, you'll see it disappears. But it trimmed off more than I really want to trim, because I still want to show where somebody could reach above, because that's a reasonable reach location. So I'm going to type U for undo, and I'm going to just put another line in here temporarily. I'll just get the line tool, and I'll come down here, and again I'll snap on the shoulder. I'll come up here, and so just far enough to make sure that it intersects that circle. Now I'll use the trim tool, TR, and now I'll click on the back of it, and now you can see it just trims off the back of it. So it's good about finding the intersections of the line or the circle or arc with the other parts of the drawing. And then the next thing I can do is escape till I'm done trimming, and I'll come back and select that line that I just drew. That was just temporary for construction purposes. I'll type ER for erase, ERASE, I guess, for erase. Okay, and it's gone. Okay, so now I've got my side view of the worker. So the next thing I want to do is draw my top view, and I want to space my worker right in the center here. So again, the trim is going to help me, or the snap function is going to help me, because you may recall when I set my snap functions, I'll come back down here and just show you again. When I click on settings, let's see, snap settings, object snap, I also selected midpoint. So now when I want to draw my worker, I'm going to make a top view, and I got to show this 10 centimeter that can come out. What I can do is I'll just get my tool. You'll notice that as I come down here and hover over the edge of this bench, it actually gives me the midpoint as a snap point. I can click on that. I'll just come out again, 10, 1, 0. Okay. Now I want to come down here. Oops, I got a little aggressive in my pushing return. I caught another key. Type return. Okay. And now I'll come down here, and I got to look on my drawing to get the distance from the center of the body to the right shoulder. So center to shoulder is 194 or millimeters, or 19.4 centimeters. So I'll type 19.4. Okay, so there's that link. And now the next thing I got to do is draw this horizontal line, but I want to correspond to the distance from the torso here to where it intersects the bench, not to the center here. So I can't really find that distance on my sheet, but I can measure it from down here. But now what I want to do is be able to find that intersection. So there's actually a tool here that's going to help me. I'm going to come back over here to my snap modes. Right click on that to go to settings. And there's one down here if I go to object snap, and it's called apparent intersection. Okay, this is a useful tool. And actually right now I'm going to hide that one that says midpoint, okay, because that can create interference. Now if I come down here, I can hover over that intersection. You can see it gives me a big X and says intersection. And now I can slide my cursor back up here, and you can see how it will allow me to align the end point of that line for the arm with that intersection of this arc on the top of the bench. And I'll just type return, and I'll type return again. So now you can see I've got my half of a top view of the worker. Okay, so let's go ahead and create our reach limits for this one. Again, I'm going to start with a circle. I'll come out here and start with the right shoulder, and I'll come out to the end of the hand like that. And there I've got a circle, but again I've got some excess space here behind me. And again, you know, that I may want to, I want to trim this. So the question is, do I want to trim this just to the edge of the bench, or do I want to trim it here closer to the torso? And either way is fine, depending upon what you're doing. If you're just concerned with placement of work on top of the bench, it may be fine to trim it here at the edge of the workbench. If you're going to maybe have some tools or located over here that the worker has to reach for, or some bins or parts or something, then you might want to extend these further back. Just for the exercise here, I'm going to trim them so they correspond to what we have in the bottom. And I'll just come down here and get a line, which is going to be temporary again. I'm going to start here from the torso on the bottom. I'm going to just bring this up so it intersects both sides of that circle. Type return. Now I'll get type TR for trim. And I'll cut off the back of this guy like this. Okay, that's done. I'm going to type E for erase. And I'm going to select that line I just made. I don't really need that. Okay, and that's gone. Okay, so now I got half of the worker on top. Now let's go ahead and construct the other half. And I can do the same thing again, but it's actually a little easier if I just copy this and move it horizontally. Now, you can see, because I use the polyline tool, I can't just copy this arm or the center and move it up here. So what I'm going to do, I want to separate that into individual links. So I'm going to select it and I'm going to type explode. Okay, and now if you can see that I can select individual parts of this. So first thing I'm going to do, let's zoom in on it so I can see what I'm doing. Not zoom in, not out. Okay, and I'm going to select this link that goes from the shoulder, or from the center of the body to the right shoulder, and I'm going to go copy. And I'm going to select the right shoulder as the base point, and I'm going to move this to the center of the body. Okay, and I'll zoom out a little bit, and you can see what I've done here. I'll hit escape to tell it I'm done copying. And you know, essentially I've created a line now that goes from the center of the body to the left shoulder. And what I'm going to do is make a copy of this arm and the arc and move it to the left shoulder. So I'm going to go copy. Okay, and I'm going to select the arc. And I'm going to select the arm. I'll type return to tell I'm done copying. And it says specify the first point. Again, the dynamic menu is really kind of helpful because it keeps telling me what to do next. And I'm going to move this up here like that, and I'll hit escape to tell it I'm done copying, and I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see what I've done. And now I've got the top view and the side view of the workbench in separate layers. Okay, one more thing I want to do in this exercise, and that's put some basic dimensions on here. Okay, and we're going to use the dimension tool for that. And this is really one of the sweet things about these drawing, or about using CAD programs, is that the dimensioning is just really slick and makes life really easy. If you ever tried to do this in something like PowerPoint or something, you know, it just, you know, looks terrible and it's hard to do. Okay, so let's make another layer. So these are going to be dimensions for the reach capability of our 5 percentile female. So let me come up here and create a new layer. So layers, and I'm going to make this DIM for dimensions. I'm going to make it F5. Okay, dimensions for F5. All right, and now this time we got to give this some different color yet, and I'm just going to make these dimensions white. And I'm going to make sure that I make the dimension layer active, because I forgot that last time. Again, if you forget something like this, you can kind of go back and fix it. So don't panic. Just keep at it. You'll get it figured out. Okay, now it's really important that you put dimensions onto the side of the drawing, not on top of the drawing. And I can tell you, if you turn in homework with dimensions on top, you're going to lose points. Okay, so pay attention to that. They should be off to the side, and ideally they should be, if it's a common dimension between the top and the bottom view, it should be on top. So let me show you an example of this. We've got a dimension window here, and you can come down and actually select linear dimension. Or you can come down here and you can just type DIM for dimension. Or you can go up in the dimension menu at the top and select your dimension. But basically, they're all kind of work the same way, and you know, there's different variations of the kind of dimension you want to make. You can see again, it comes up and wants to snap on the lower left corner of that top bench. I'll come across to the right and it snaps on that. And then I just drag this out here like this and it will create the dimension for me. I'll pull this down a little bit and you'll see why in just a sec. Okay, but the problem is because of the way I've scaled it, the text and the arrows in my dimensions don't show up very well. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, I'll type return to tell it I'm done making my dimension. And I'm going to go to the dimension style. And you can find dimension style up here under dimensions. And you see down here, you find dimension style somewhere here. There we go. If you're using a window machine, it doesn't have a menu on top. So you can just come down here and type DIM style. TYLE. Okay, and opens the dimension style window, as you might expect. Okay, so let's see what we can do here. And this is something that I remember when I was learning to use AutoCAD for the second time in my life, and this just really found this hard to find. But here's the little settings button in the middle, and you've got to click on that. There's a drop down, and you'll find something that says Modify. And basically, what you want to do is go to where we can't see. It's under Fit. Yeah, use under Fit. All right, here at the tab at the top. And go down to where it says use overall scale of, and default is 1. So I'm just going to change this to 100. We'll see what that does for us. So this will be a little bit of a trial and error so we get the dimensions about the size we want. And that looks pretty good. Okay. Oh, one other thing, I got to set the precision. Shoot, I forgot to do that. Otherwise we'll get a lot of zeros after our inner dimension, which is just noise. So let's go back to modify again. So we'll go back to primary units, and where it says precision, we're going to do decimal. Precision, we don't want 4 digits. We'll just go to the nearest whole number because we're in centimeters, which is probably fine for most of the stuff. Okay, that's not too bad. It's probably a little bit big, maybe twice as big as what we need. So that's okay. We'll just type dimension style again. Nothing but little bits. DIMSTYLE. Go. And we'll come back here, modify, and let's go to where we had under fit, and we'll change this from 100 to 50. And let's see how that looks. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so you can see you got nice arrowheads here. And just a few things, you know, again, this is, I've got this position between the two of them because this is a common dimension between the top and the bottom. Now the next thing I want to show is how far somebody can actually reach on that workbench. And we could do this reach with both hands or reach with one hand. I'm going to select this common area in the center for my dimension. So again, I'm going to come down here and get my linear dimension tool. I'll come up here, and I can come up here and find this intersection right there. And I'll just now drag that back down here. And I'm going to plop this dimension kind of halfway between the other one and the drawing itself. That says 44. Okay. So what that tells me is that the worker can reach 44 centimeters with both hands to the center of the body like that. Okay. Now, the depth, the width of the bench is the width of the bench is kind of unique to the top drawing, as is the width of the drawing areas. So when I come up here, let me zoom out on this a little bit so I can get a little better hand or manipulate my, oops. When you can use, by pushing down the center of the button and moving the mouse, you can pan, and sometimes I just push the left button instead and it doesn't give me the desired results, so that's why it looks funny. Okay, so let me get the dimension tool, and I'm going to come in here first, and I'm going to get this dimension here, which represents how far you can reach with both hands. Come on here, that turns out to be 74 centimeters. And then I'm going to come up here, and let me get the dimension tool again, and I'll get the distance that you can reach with the left hand or the right hand. And that turns out to be almost twice as much, 152 centimeters. And then I'm going to put the width of the bench with this. So I've got all my dimensions here for the width of the bench and the reach widths on the same side of the bench. Okay. Something like that. Okay. Okay, so that's all we need for the top. Now we'll come back down here. We'll get our dimension tool. And we've got the height of the bench. So I'm going to put this here. on this side. Pulls off like this. And there's my height, 90 centimeters. So I'll zoom out. Let's see, is there anything else here I need? Because again, the goal here is to specify the height, you know, the geometry of the workstation and where somebody can reach on that workstation. So I've got the depth, I got the height, I got the width, and I've shown where somebody could reach. I could show some of these dimensions down here, but generally, you know, unless there's a particular reason, you know, we try to avoid, you know, redundancies in our dimensions. But make sure that your dimensions here are visible and you haven't got any more decimal places in there than what are necessary. Lastly, be sure to save your drawing, okay? So make sure you come up here and go File, Save As. And remember, when you save these drawings, you're going to put your unique name. So this is going to be TJA. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put exercise 4.1, and then I'm going to put TJA. Okay. So that way, when I look at this and grade these, I will know whose drawing I'm looking at. Okay, that's all I need to do. I'll put the DWG suffix on it. And I'm going to save this to my desktop for now. If I can find my desktop. Okay. Okay, so there you have it. Next time we'll actually talk about now making blocks so we can actually export some of this. And you can do the same thing now to make your 95 percentile male. And you know what we'll do is we can just hide the 5 percentile, create another layer for M95. Oops, we'll hide our dimensions also. Oops, you can't hide the dimensions if it's the active layer, so I'll have to go back to 0 for that. Make that 0. And I'll hide the dimensions. And then you can make a new layer here. And we'll call that one M95. We can make M95 active. And you get to repeat the process. Okay? So have fun. Make your, oops, cancel that guy. So I meant to hit Command Save instead of Command Find. Okay, have fun.